Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the third annual Chipola Poetry Café. My name is Ernest, and I'm on the faculty of the Literature and Language Department here at Chipola College, and I'm so pleased to see so many poetry lovers out here on a Thursday night. So welcome, we're glad you're here. This effort to promote the appreciation of poetry in our community had its genesis back in 2018. Inspired by a conversation with the then Poet Laureate of Northwest Florida, Jamie Jones. You may remember him if you came to the very first one back in 2019. He was our guest speaker that year at our inaugural event in 2019. That may sound kind of funny to you. This is our third year, in 2019, 20, 21, 22. Sounds like four, right? But something happened in 2020. I can't remember exactly what. We couldn't do anything anymore, so we had to get back on track last year, and so here we are again in April, which is National Poetry Month, and so back on track again. Well, Jamie Jones, the speaker that year, encouraged me that poetry was not just for academics or for the famous. Instead, poetry is a medium for the people. All people have emotions. All people have profound thoughts. And some of those people have been able to capture their thoughts and feelings in words, lines, and stanzas. And as Jamie said, the world needs more poets. The world is better when we can hear such voices. William Butler Yeats, the Irish modernist poet, said, "Out of the quarrel with others, we make rhetoric. Out of the quarrel with ourselves, we make poetry." Less rhetoric, more poetry. That would be a good change in our world today. Our aim here has been to give a voice to regular folks like us who might never be published in a national poetry journal. Because what they think, what we think, needs a platform. An important outgrowth of the Chipola Poetry Cafe has been the Grassroots Poetry Society. Sean O. Smith, raise your hand, Sean, and it was last year's guest speaker and one of our poets tonight. And I co-founded this group, and we co-curated Poetry Quarterly that showcases local poets and artists' talents. And under Mr. Smith's direction, we have recently published our first book, Litter Like You Live Here, which is now available for purchase through Amazon. And when you leave, you can go by and check out the price on that. And some of us are going to be reading from that book tonight. You can find copies of Grassroots, the Grassroots Groups Quarterly. I don't have one here to show you, but they're on the table, and many of you picked one up when you came in, or picked several up when you came in. If you didn't, they are for free, and the quarterlies are, and Litter Like You Live Here is for sale. If you're interested in becoming a part of Grassroots Poetry Society, you need to just talk to one of us. You can talk to me, or Sean O. Smith, or any of the other Grassroots people. Raise your hands. You can see them. They're going to come up and read a little bit later on too. So a word about listening to poetry. Poet Dana Joya observes, "Poetry helps both to enlarge our humanity and to give us the power to express it. One of the chief uses of poetry in all literature is to enlarge our experience, to allow us to see the world through the eyes of other people and other ages. It develops our understanding of important life events like love and desire, birth and death, loneliness, and loss." There will be a great deal going on behind this microphone here tonight. We live in an age of distraction. Because poetry by its nature is both compact and expansive, it would be very easy to get distracted and miss the importance of what is being communicated tonight. As the Welsh poet Gwyneth Lewis wrote in her poem Homecoming, "Less said, more meant." Let's be countercultural this evening. Please silence and put away all cell phones and other distracting elements. Let's sit figuratively or even literally on the edges of our seats. Let's lean in a bit as the poetry is being read. Eyes wide open, unblinking, and maybe we will truly hear something worth hearing tonight. I have a short thank you list that I need to read. First of all, I want to thank Drs. Sarah Clemens and Pam Rentz. Dr. Rentz is here tonight. Thank you for their leadership and assistance. I want to thank my colleagues in the English department, many of whom are here tonight, for their support and encouragement through this process. Julie Fuquay and the Chipola College Foundation for working out our funding for this endeavor. Phi Beta Kappa for promotion and participation. Evelyn Ward for her work in scheduling and providing this inviting locale. It's always beautiful when we meet over here. I mean, just look out the window. We have a sunset and a pond. Isn't that wonderful? It's beautiful. Also, Connie Smith and her crew at Physical Plant for their creativity and hard work setting up the venue. I didn't ask for the candlelight. They just thought of that. So here we have it. Stephanie Parker and the Sunland Print Shop for the beautiful grassroots quarterlies. Josh Manning and David DeWitt for providing the background music for this evening. So thank you guys for that. It was great. All the poets and artists who have contributed to Grassroots and the Café. Sean O. Smith, my partner in poetry and co-curator of Grassroots. And tonight's speaker, Mr. Lynn Wallace, who's here. I really owe a double thanks to Mr. Wallace tonight because he graciously agreed to step in for our original speaker, Dr. James Kimbrell, who unfortunately had to cancel at the very last minute this afternoon because of a family health emergency. So please pray for Dr. Kimbrell's family, but we welcome Mr. Wallace here tonight. The set of the program tonight is that we will begin with a talk and a poetry reading by Mr. Wallace, and after his talk, the other local poets are going to come up and read their poetry. I'll introduce them in groups, and we'll hear from some local poets. And then finally, Mr. Wallace has agreed to field questions from the audience. So think about questions that you may have before the end, and anything about poetry or whatever, and he would love to answer those. He's really looking forward to answering. So I want to introduce Lynn Wallace to you, and let's try to read this. Lynn Wallace grew up in the American Southwest and then lived in Costa Rica several years as a boy. After receiving an MA in English fiction writing from the Pennsylvania State University in 1986, he was awarded a Fulbright to Costa Rica, where he taught at the University of Costa Rica, wandered the backcountry, and worked on several writing projects. One of these works is a memoir, an excerpt of which was published in the literary supplement of the daily La Nación, and installments of which have appeared in postcards from Pottersville, Calliope, and elsewhere. His novel, Los Caminantes, was published in 2005. Most recently, some of his poems have appeared in the Atlanta Review. Mr. Wallace this has changed. Well, he's now an emeritus professor from Gulf Coast State College and also teaches adjunct there at FSU. He teaches creative writing, literature, and film, and composition while supervising various programs. In 2006, he was named Professor of the Year, and for well over 10 years, he has served as advisor to the Muslim Student Association. He resides in Marion, Florida, with his wife Jill and daughters Ellen, Joy, and Sarah Grace. So please make welcome Mr. Lynn Wallace.
Just looking at that sky out there is terrific, and it is a pond. Maybe we should call it a poetry retention pond. It's nice, nice view. Yeah, this came upon me a little suddenly, but I told Kurt that I was thinking about saying something before I read anyway. So this gives me a little bit more time to say something. But I've taught creative writing for probably 30 years now, off and on. Some of it unofficially, because one of the first things I did as a writer when I was taking classes is I formed a writing group outside of the university. We got together and we look at our poems, critique them, and be somewhat gentle with each other, but still critical, and the same for fiction. So it's probably been 40 years that I've been working in the arts in one form or another, poetry, fiction, or screenwriting for that matter. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm surprised how big the audience is. This is great. We might have fewer students at Florida State attending Poetry Day. In fact, Florida State forgot it was National Poetry down in the city, not the main campus. They forgot it's National Poetry Month, so they kind of corralled me at the last minute. So on Monday, I'm doing something on haiku. So they've aimed much lower than you guys, so I really appreciate your support. They track of these things, and they do a good job with it. So thank you very much for inviting me. I want to talk a little bit about some of the foundational elements of poetry. I'm not going to be very detailed with that, but I wrote here why and how all of us should be poets. And you can be a poet by being a reader of poetry. Not enough people read poetry. There's too much competing against poetry, isn't there? Dexter, Game of Thrones, all the TV serials compete with our time. And they're good works, I watch them too, but poetry is squeezed out by sports and entertainment and music. But poetry will be here a lot longer than all of us, probably. It's really eternal. So we should take some time with poetry and get back to it when we can. It's easy to be distracted and go to something else, isn't it? Poetry is older than all of us. Like 3,000, sorry, I said 300,000. 3,000 years or older. A lot of it's oral before that. So it's really quite long lived. Still alive and well in some places. I mean, this is one of those places. But there are places like Ireland where if you're the poet in that village, you can't go into a bar without them buying you a pint. That's how much they appreciate their poets in some villages and hamlets in Ireland. So maybe we should do that too. And I'm available to be But poetry will outlive all or most of the entertainments that crowd out poetry and literature generally. What do we know about poetry? Sometimes it's forced on us in school, isn't it? They give us these complex poems and they ask us to unlock them. And only the teacher has the key to unlock those poems. Poems should be easier than that. And they probably are, if we're good readers. There's no poem on earth that you can't unlock yourself if you're a good reader. It's part of the key to being a good reader, reading a lot. And also, things compete for our time in terms of reading, also squeezed out. Who is our current poet laureate? Anybody know? You did, that's not fair. Does anybody know? That's our national poet. Those are 1 and 2 year terms usually. And this is our 24th poet laureate. There's no poet up on your cell phone. Does anybody know? Oh, I heard, yeah, Joy Harjo. First Native American. You said that, didn't you? You just didn't want to leap out there and say it, but it's Joy Harjo from the Muscogee tribe. First Native American who's a poet laureate. And there's some notable poets out there, and so you know some of these names here. Joseph Brodsky escaped the Soviet Union barely, and got here and became an American citizen. He was poet laureate in 91, 92. Billy Collins started later in life. He wasn't discovered by through the academics until later in life. One of the better poets, I think, 2001, 2003. It's usually a 2 year term. Rita Dove, Donald Hall, Ted Kruser, Philip Levine. Philip Levine's interesting because I studied under his student, Glover Davis, and I met Philip Levine when I was at San Diego State. W.S. Myrtle, I met him also, a great poet, died not too long ago. He was the poet laureate from 2010, 2013. Robert Pinsky, and I could read a bunch of names. Charles Simic, Mark Strand, Robert Penn Warren, read more. Joy Harjo is our 24th. So one thing you can do is read more poems. And what better to read than the poets that have been acclaimed? You can read other poets too, read each other's poems. But our poet laureates have stood the test of time, and they've been vetted, as they say. So if you want a good poet to read, buy a book from one of these poets. When's the last time any of us bought a book of poems? I'm not going to ask too personally there, but probably never. Maybe they're in a book of literature, an anthology. But if you really like a poet, buy a book and get to know it pretty well. So how many books of poetry do you have in your house would be a question, I suppose. And, the psychologists often talk about reading to our children. They say more important than reading to our children is your children see you read. Believe it or not. It's really important that they see that you think reading is important. If you have books on your bookshelf, and some of them are poetry books, they'll finally figure that out. Don't know. Find a favorite poet, acquire 1 or 2 of his or her books. And then, as poetry readers, we have to deal with our assumptions and biases about poetry. Sometimes we think, well, it has to rhyme, or it has to be free verse, you know, that battle between traditional verse and free verse. I'd say, if you're a poet, have a tool belt with all the tools. And if a poem seems to have rhythm and music to it, put it in metrical verse, and have rhyme if you wish. If it doesn't, you have a lot of good images, base your poem on that, and you don't need the rhyme, you can make it a free verse poem. Try your hand at different things. I remember some poets told me, a famous poet told me, let the poem find its own form. Rather than say, well, today I'm writing a sonnet. Well, automatically conscripted it. Has to have this form. That's a noble enterprise. Sonnets are hard to write, villanelles as well. But let the poem find its form and see what it takes you. There's halfway houses between free verse and formal verse, aren't there? Like accentuals. All words in English and most other Western languages have accented syllables. You look up the word in the dictionary to see the stress falls on one or more syllables. You can put, you can write a poem in accentuals where every line has the same number of accented syllables. It's an interesting device. Don't worry about the rhyme or the meter, you have accentuals. Same with syllabics. Every line has the same number of syllables, or some structure. Some structure, say it's 5 lines, and the first line has 10 syllables, the next one 8, the next one 5, and so on. And do that on separate stanzas. So there's lots of things you can do with poetry. Sometimes we let I know I did when I was younger, I let the tail wag the dog. It had to be a certain kind of poem. Sometimes be a little bit loose with that and let the poem find its way. And you find something. What can you do? Several things you can do, I think, and I recommend. Commit a couple of poems to memory. Not necessarily wrong, although I think it's fine to do that. But commit a couple of poems to memory. It would be a poem that's really giving you some comfort in the past. Commit that. Remember, you have a 5-hour drive to Atlanta. Visit that poem once in a while. It cause you great comfort and joy to do that. So if you have 3 or 4 poems committed to memory, or even one, you wake up 3 or 4 in the morning unaccountably, and you're a little bit annoyed that you're not sleeping, you remember that poem. It's given you such pleasure in the past. And recount it to yourself. It's just a normal thing to do. Sit down on a semi-regular basis, or when inspired to do so, and write. I think the former is better than the latter. Sometimes you wait a long time for inspiration. And, the owl of Minerva only flies at midnight. Sometimes you're not ready for it, and there's the inspiration, but you're doing something else. It's gone real quickly. Sit down on a semi-regular basis. If you're a fiction writer, you just have to do that. Not a intense fiction writing day. It's every 2 hours, 3 to 5 in the morning. You get up before one of the cat is there. Everybody else is sleeping. Perfect silence to write for 2 hours. As a poet, probably if you devoted 30 minutes to an hour a day, poem each day, and maybe a poem in a couple of days, that'd be quite a contribution to your body of work, right? And also you'll find the more you write, the better you write, and the quicker you write. Not all poems come easy or easily, but the more you do write, the more you find your way more quickly, in most cases. So write a lot if you can. From a writing group, 3 to 7 people maybe. More than 7 gets a little unwieldy. If you have a writing group, you meet even once a month. But I have a fiction writing group in Penn City, and we meet every other Friday. It's a good idea to do things like that. Rather than being, say, class-oriented or class-centered, we formed a poetry group here, understand? So that's a good thing to do. Join the group. Write a poem. So I want to close with that condition. Now, if we have more time, write a heavy reader and I write a poem. And I have various exercises and activities that are guaranteed for you to produce a poem. It'll surprise you what you can do with a little bit of freedom. I impose the loose guideline, and you write a poem in that, and you surprise yourself what you do next. 2 poems anybody can write instantaneously, a poem about place. how we celebrate places in our lives. It could be a small town, it could be the farmhouse where your grandparents lived, it could be the field in front of the farmhouse where your parents lived, a little general store in a small town in Alabama or Oklahoma, like that. Write a poem about it. And the way you do that is just list all the details, the sensory experiences you have from that place. And if you go back, in fact, the poem can be you walking or driving to that place again after having not seen it 20 years. What do you see? What do you remember? Use the sensory language of sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. Mostly sight and hearing. Right? So you can do that. You can write a poem about a place. So you can take that activity and do it yourself without a mirror. Another one is a poem about person in your life. Grandparent, great uncle, great aunt, parent who's no longer with us or with you. And celebrate that person by writing a poem about them. Again, about sensory experience of that person, the way his or her voice sounded, or what they did with their hands when they're talking with you, or the way your grandfather went out on the porch and whittled with his buck knife, whittled on a stick. Whatever it was, these little things that are memorable, you can capture that person in a poem. They're captured there forever. You can pass that on to your own children and grandchildren. So it's a great thing to do. You can write those poems. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to write a poem about man's inhumanity to man today. Those poems don't start that way. They start about little things. And those of you who write, you start with perceptions. What you see, the light reflecting on the pond out there. I might capture that in your image. It'll lead me somewhere, it'll take me somewhere. And you can plan something. So I'm glad you're here today. You're now commissioned to write a poem. I'm sure some of you would anyway. Your commission is to write a poem if you can. And I'm sure some of you will, or already have. Who wrote a poem today before you got here?
I wrote one every day.
Good for you. Denise Levertov did that. Famous American poet Denise Levertov. She got up and wrote a poem every day.
At least one.
Yeah, good. Good for you. It's a great thing to do. That's ambitious. But I'm sure.
I got enough in trouble, I can't stop it.
Well, you're open to it. That's good. That's what it is, being open. Excellent. So, okay, I guess I'll just read a couple of poems now. And later, if you might ask questions, I don't know if I have the answers, but I'll take a stab at them. One thing I want to do, though, is celebrate the fourth, so I thought I'd start with somebody else's poem. I know James Hall down to the Florida International University. I had him up at Gulf Coast back in 2000, I think, as a guest speaker. And he read his poem, and I've left it as a message on his phones. And they said, well, I'm glad I have that, and I captured it off my phone, and I played it for other people. So I'm going to do it for you. Now, keep in mind, it's the first time you've heard it. It's Spider-Man, before Spider-Man was even big. Spider-Man with a speech in it. It's titled, Maybe That's Your Problem Too. All my problems, who knows, maybe everybody's problems, is due to the fact, due to the awful truth that I'm Spider-Man. I know, all the dumb jokes, no flies on you, huh? And the ones about what do I do with all those extra legs and that, yeah, that's funny, yeah. But you try being Spider-Man for a month or two. Go ahead. You get those crazy calls from the governor asking you to twap some builder who's only trying to wipe out color TV sets. And what do I care about TV sets? But I put on the suit, the stinking suit, the sucker cups on the fingers, get my robes and little bundle of equipment, then I go flying like crazy across the town from rooftop to rooftop. Till there he is. Some poor, dumb color TV slot. And I follow him and we wrestle a little until I get him all whooped. It's a big deal. You think when you're Spider-Man, there's something big going to happen to you. Well, I tell you what, it doesn't happen that way. Nothing happens. Governor calls, I go. Bring him to police. Governor calls again, like that over and over. I think I try something different. I think I try something exciting, like racing cars. Something to make my heart beat in a different way. But then you can't quit. You can't just quit being someone like Spider-Man. You're Spider-Man for life. Forever. I can't even go in my suit. it won't void, it's flame resistant. Maybe that's your problem too, who knows? Maybe that's the whole problem with everything. Nobody can void their suits, they're all flame resistant. Who knows? Yeah, that's a different point. Surprising. Sometimes we expect very formal kinds of poems, very serious. You can have fun with poems as well. When you read that poem that night before me, I said, I want to do something like that. I've never been able to catch that kind of fun poem. I'll try. But it left an impression. Poetry has a wider range than we can possibly conceive in various languages, various cultures. So I just want to read that. I have one that Fred said he was interested in. So I'm going to read it. It's called Heavy Lifting. I lost my father in 1999. That's 23 years ago. So it's called Heavy Lifting. When the girls fall asleep in the back seat, the job of lifting them, carrying them inside, laying them on their beds falls to me. At 80 pounds, the eldest poses problems. A deadlift from my back, a sagging weight pinched between two straight rod arms. Lately, she has grown the whole way. How many times she can take this? I may be good for 100 pounds. My lugging her can't be much better than ripping open her sleepfulness, dumping her on the bed. After her current back problem from lifting a paraplegic bed, I once heard wailing at night in the apartment lot below, drunk, having fallen from his wheelchair. Can you help me, sir? I have to lose 200 pounds back on the seat and suffer later. Men can lift heavy things, really heavy things. Can on average run faster, longer, but have advantage in little less. You do not bear your children, as mothers do. You do not move your skin close. My father, who managed fatherly affairs at a distance, shrank to 100 pounds at the end. Were life deliriously symmetrical, I would have carried him on my shield at the end. But that was left to paramedics with a flex leg gurney. I wonder what all the lifting will come to. How little it has finally to do with being a man. Though it seems so important at the time. Will one of my daughters or both lift me that last time? Or will I drag myself from wherever I have fallen, manage to raise myself into chair or bed, thinking how light, really, how very light I am on this, the last of the heavy lifting. Sometimes poetry gets commingled and mixed up with fiction. So this is called A Reluctance to Finish My Novel. I had a break in my novel set in Central America, like 6 months. And I imagine my characters were waiting there at the edge of the jungle, waiting for me to finish the novel. So, on the reluctance to finish my novel. This isn't about me. I stand a chapter or two from the end. No possibility for a sequel. Most of these will die, albeit nobly. Death final and irreversible. I could leave them in their misery and joy, suspended in my cloud chamber, the tramp steamer, idling in port, fishing in a lonely spire of smoke, a trail of bundle-laden refugees plowing down to the dock. The cancer could lie in stasis, the baby on the cusp, the battle order in transit, the hero doing more really than she'd expected to do, like free soloing that cliff face and some possible overhang. Why have any of them died? Why serve their final moments to these readers pressed against their cushions, eager for my characters to endure gladiatorial combat, or making love like Hollywood actresses and actors? I take a break, have a glass of wine, my clock ticking. I return and ask my characters what they dream, what they want. Together they say, and we go on with or without you, even though we will die. So that's fiction and poetry getting mixed up a bit. This one's called Throwing Away an Old Shirt. I get incredibly attached to some of my possessions. I imagine you do too. And it really bothers me to throw anything away. I want to recycle it and repurpose it until it falls apart. So this is called throwing away an old shirt. This green and blue plaid shirt, at least a dozen years old, I can date from a photo where it seems crisp and clean and proud of itself. Now afraid of the collar, faded, worn, straight at the seams. Consigned to mowing the lawn or crawling into the house to check pipes. Not fit for my chills. So hard to part with such a shirt, having worn it like a skin for so long. Today I placed it in the kitchen trash. This shirt, just laundered, suddenly thinking it's time, there must come a time. Still, when I wake during the night, the shirt comes to mind. I decide there's still some way, there must be a way for it to carry on. I think of a test. If I grab the shirt, the back of the shirt, and pull apart with two hands, and it doesn't rip like rotten cloth, then it can go on. But what good is that? I know it will tear. So something else. Now as I pad across the floor from one room to the next, the cat's taking notice. Perhaps as it lies there at the top of the trash, it glows in the dark. Then something momentous has happened to me, to it, or me in it. Something celebratory. So I look. The shirt is melted into the dark. I can barely make it out. I can imagine it sleeping, thinking nothing of the feelings I've heaped upon it, mocking my thinking by not thinking at all. I'm a fool. I bundle up the trash bag and take it out, the street side bin. In a few hours, when I return to sleep, the truck will come and take it away. More recently, by the way, I had another little shirt like that, and a cat died right in my arms. I was doing a Zoom session to a class like that. The cat died right next to me. I know they're sick. So I got my old shirt in there. So that's a repurposing of my shirt. I think the last one I'll do is one called Weightless. Weightless. And this is from my central Pennsylvania days. In Pennsylvania, if you look at it on a map, it has this curve of mountain ridges and valleys across the middle. If you've ever been there and taken the interstate, you see all these mountain ranges. They're not big mountains, but smaller mountains. And in the spring and summer, the sun heats up the air in the valley, and it wells up along the mountain edges. So it's a great place for gliders. They have a gliding airport here, and the airplane pulls these gliders out, puts them up in the air, and they spiral for hours riding these airplanes. So this is about that. It's called Weightless. A sunny afternoon in May, among central Pennsylvania hills, I lean against the hood of my car. Above, a white glider, embedded in blue sky. I see 2, 3, now 5. Each banking, flashing its breadth of wing. A buzzing plane hauls another in place. Gliders circle for sheets of warm air mounting the hillsides. I close my eyes, and when I search the sky once more, the gliders have dropped into shallow spirals, from faltering uplifts and gravity, or from a principle I know nothing about. One by one, they ease below the crisp terminus of hill, and I let them go. Nearby, 3 black calves clamber up on a grassy slope, and a clumsy dance. Not me, sprightly, and weightless. The thing I didn't read to you, because I thought there were going to be a lot of kids here, was the press corps, Bugs Bunny laments the passing of Elmer Fudd. I don't know why I thought kids would want that. Kids don't know Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny. 50 and older would know that. So it's not kids going on. Can you do it real quick? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I tried to write something to match the humor of James Paul's class. To press corps, Bugs Bunny laments the passing of Elmer Fudd. Listening to some of you media guys, you'd think I had no respect for him. That he was all dumb and all. But that guy left law school, okay? We take up acting. Some people think we kind of dislike each other, but it wasn't like that. I'll tell you what I really can't stand, carrots. And people who think they know all about our relationship. Don't you think Jerry felt a thing for Dean, or Fred for Ginger, Bob for Bean? What about the groups? I'd say Shimp felt fun taking Cody's place. So give me a break, will you? The first thing I'll do is lay Elmer's little blunderbuss across my lap, sip tea and watch the sunset from the porch of his bungalow, which he left me clean and clear. I'll polish that gun while it's for, give it a place of honor above the mantle there. I like to wear his honey cap, but I have to cut holes for my ears. What's that? Gosh, you guys never lets up. It doesn't mean a thing anymore, but you need to learn respect for others in their time of loss. Okay already, I'll do it for you just once. What's up, Doc? I can't wait to hear your points.
Sure. Thank you so much. Another round of applause. Thank you so much. Well, now comes the time when we hear from some local poets. And we're going to do this in groups of people. So the first group that I'm going to make go first here is the grassroots guys. They're used to this. And so these are the people who have been active in our Grassroots Poetry Society and been published many times in our little do-it-yourself book that we put out every quarter or so. So in this order, I'm just going to call the order and then sit down and you can know your order. But Sean O. Smith, Emily Tetlow, Ashley Hess, Susanna Gaston, Tony Johnson, Joyce Claire Jordan, Chase Corbin, Daisy White, and my daughter, Carolyn McNeil.
Good evening, I'm Sean Smith, and I won't delay because I know you are all eager to hear my profound thoughts. This poem is called Grassroots. We are but merely a tribune. I'm going to ask you to contribute, but do with your art what you do. If you're looking to make history or construct your own, in torn up soil set on time's loop line, then Grassroots is where you'll hope to find your work. Because what else deserves the challenge of testing the winds of our universe besides yours? The idea for a book with Grassroots started with experience. I went to the group and I told them, just write, and you have creative freedom. Whatever you bring will work because you're writing your experiences, and at the same time, when you submit your poetry, you will be experiencing publishing and contributing to your own publishing experience. And that evolved into Literally Like You Live Here, because one day I was driving down my road home, which is a no outlet, and there's a bunch of trash on the side of the road. And there's only one group of people capable of littering there. It's not me, it's my neighbors. So I thought, Literally Like You Live Here. And the poem that I wrote with that title came about just over a year of experience. I had these moments and I wrote that experience down and I sewed it into a patchwork poem. And this is Literally Like You Live Here. At first, the motto was, for every piece of trash I pick up, I'll throw down 2. Now, I won't be judged for the sins of my youth. I'm an ice cream cake, center table, under glass of a cake plate, on dining room display. See what I'm like walking in at the end of day. Smoking at Disney is nothing to brag about. Who needs a good deed when it comes with cloud. Smoke plumes from the crowds. Finding time to pass up thumbs, pathetic attempts to pick up the standard. Frauds don't confess transgressions, but given one ride and to his discredit, the imposter living in my head says, no frauds go to heaven. Written on the lines between electrical poles, lightning strikes twice, and I quote, litter like you live here, litter like you have something to leave. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm reading 2 poems tonight. I'll start with the first one, In a Breath. This semi-sacred place, so gently grown, from dreams and kinship, is now home to me. Its people, with their hope like fragile fog before the sun, they speak it so it won't die unuttered. Hope is a dandelion. A breath can spread its seeds to grow despite its locale. Dauntless yellow, proving life will thrive if granted opportunity. So ignore bitter people's gripes and breathe. The second one is titled, Help Yourself. My fridge is filled with things that aren't mine. Champagne I didn't buy, soda that I don't drink, and pepperoni from our pizza night. My open door philosophy, my source of pride, now governs the fridge. What you need is there. I hope what you need is here. Please help.
When you come up, since we're going to get the groups, say your name, poets, before you read. I forgot that.
Good evening. I'm Ashley Hess, and I have 2 poems tonight. The first one is called Most Likely to Succeed. A premature medal of honor adds weight to what is already weak. The weight of the title is crushing. I look up, dizzy, at success. The bar raises a notch or 2. And I reach for the undefined thing, faltering when I fall short. I cannot accept that success is defined by degrees or dollar signs, and I wish I had not accepted the title without understanding what it meant. Nothing. And then the second one that I have tonight is called The House That Bitterness Built, and this is actually a poem that I wrote recently about my job. And that's kind of important for context because I'm a probation secretary, so as you can imagine, it can be an interesting job at times, but I wrote this recently, so that's just kind of important for context. So, the walls were built of insults and injuries, sometimes theirs, sometimes mine. Responsibility's roof was rife with holes, initially theirs, offered to me with contempt. As I attempt to repair the roof with reform, the garden below sprouts seeds of bitterness. I look through rose-colored glasses and I feel them slip. I slowly descend from the poorly patched roof. My help, unwanted, is undone before my feet touch the ground. I retreat within the safety of the walls and look out through jaded windows until a blue-eyed girl emerges from the crowd. The pain in her eyes hurls a rock through the glass, and I press against the safety of the walls. The walls for safety, but it crumbles. I risk another look into those eyes, which I suddenly see too clearly. The jaded window is shattered, and my rose-colored glasses are gone.
Good evening. My name is Susanna Gaston, and I have 3 poems to read tonight. The first one is entitled Feel What You Feel, and with this context, I wrote this a few months ago after my cousin committed suicide. Just so you know, I'm not depressed now. This was a couple months ago. Feel what you feel. It's okay. Breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Again. Feel what you feel. What do I feel? Devastation, heartbreak, anger, sadness, empathy. This is not okay. I'm not okay. But it's okay not to be okay. Or so they say. Feel what you feel. Name it. I feel like I have to be strong for everyone. I feel like the world is crumbling around me. I feel everyone else's pain on top of my own. I feel like I'm drowning, like I can't breathe. I feel nauseous and sick. I don't feel okay. The second one is entitled Always with Love. Busy Sunday, family all around. Emotions run high, but love is found. With comfort, being surrounded by those mutually wounded. Then Monday comes, alone again, in a quiet house, but love shows up in unexpected ways, and God whispers, "You're never alone." My third one is entitled Epilogue. Fall, the most beautiful season, leaves changing to brilliant colors, the days simply beautiful, decidedly cool and comfortable.
I'm Chloe Johnson. My poem is called Whistles, and it's featured in our literally appeared. My dentist whistles as he falls, a joyful sound that rings playfully in my ears. What can make a man so happy? Surely not the smell of another's breath, or the whirring of the drill as he works on cavities. Perhaps it's the lie he hears out of me. Of course I floss daily. As I lie back on the plastic-covered chair, mouth open wide, eyes wandering to him, then to his assistant, and back again. I remember due to their quick glances and masking smiles. Why would a man be happy when he works across from his wife?
My name is Joyce Claire Jordan. My first poem is Pick Up the Paper, and I was inspired to write this poem through my dad, who's now deceased. He taught all of his girls how to cook. It's been a while since I cooked a crackling cornbread, and I haven't eaten chitlins since Daddy died. Got 3 green tomatoes and can't decide I can't decide if I will use breadcrumbs, flour, or meal to fry them. These index cards of recipes, they remind me how he left this world prior to the one-on-one where he model and give added notes. They crowd the kitchen floor and spark the memory of the first time I cooked a pot of rice. I hadn't cooked his pigeon peas and rice or made the cum salad. This litter of ideas are spread like the cans I pick up on my trash wall. Recycle valuables that become more special each time they come. The second poem is See the Forest for the Trees. When I drive down the road and see a stacked pile of trees torn down for construction, trucks entering and leaving the highway, tractor forks digging up the soil, I turn the Isley Brothers up and imagine the earthworm who is about to die and wonder what new invention comes when the soil has to be formed and nourished by some unnatural source. Vultures are skipping from the edge of the road quickly, deciding not to become roadkill and stealing a nibble from a carcass inches from a truck moving fast. I hear the mockingbird making an imitation, while the blackbird quickly flies to hide the shimmer dangling from his beak. There were 40 acres for sale. The owner did build to suit. I used to walk between the trees, and on sunny days, take off my shoes and walk barefooted on a hot ground that scorched the bottom of my feet. I wish a tribal dance could revive the grounds. I wish I could play the fiddle in tribute to the Paul Brazil and paint the world with the fiery red-colored dye from times past for which its fine wood was used.
You guys hear me okay? Hey y'all, I'm Chase. I'm known for my creative titles. So this one I've got for you today is it's called Untitled. The spirit doesn't die. Instead, it collects dust. Any once iron will lies weakened with rust. It may be restored. No, it can and it must. But the spirit isn't dead. Instead, it collects dust. The spirit doesn't die. Instead, it lays abandoned. Faculties and motivation no longer seem to command, and comatose ambition lies in some distant land. The spirit isn't dead. Instead, it lay abandoned. The spirit might yet live if you can start its heart. But the heart and its force are oceans apart. Ever present is the fear of depart. I promise it isn't gone. You just can't start its heart.
Whoopsie. Is this good? Okay. Okay, I'm Daisy, and I've been writing poetry for a long time. I don't really know how long, but yeah, I have 3 poems to read tonight, so let's hope I can read through them and not get kind of shaky. Alright, so the first one actually Josh reminded me of my poem that I'm going to read tonight because he mentioned the word imposter, so I was like, hey, that reminds me of one of the poems I'm going to read tonight. Alright, so I'll start with that one. A dark, cold night during the tail end of winter. It's not really, but a secluded life for these. The rain beat off the demons in my ears, pitter-patter. As I lie down in a puddle, not a soul around, it almost feels like I can truly breathe. Like the earth was doing me a favor and it didn't cost a damn thing to it. Maybe love, or more so, loving someone, is like feeling relief from what doesn't cost them. How much is it really worth to be a bit odd, maybe cheery or a little quiet and thoughtful? Your natural state might be my preferred prescription, but really, what did you have to do? Nothing but be you. And I'm glad to drink from your overflowing cup. Maybe it's hard for someone like me to imagine loving someone as an imposter. How exhausting. Why should I pay the price of being who I'm not just to provide love to somebody who got it for free? So, maybe it's also hard for me to grasp the concept of loving someone when it's very hard and you're not being who you're meant to be. So this next poem, I was actually thinking about how people take flowers, like roses, gardenias, whatever they want, I suppose, and they put it in a vase and they're just kind of sitting there and they're like, hey, this wasn't what I was meant to be alive for, but here I am. Look how pretty I am. Woo! So this is called Entertaining from the Table. As it lie on my tablecloth, flecks of petal crumbling onto the wool. I thought about its life, eating dinner and getting full. Then I wonder how long it took for that beauty to grow into our lives, how it felt getting cut down by one of our beloved knives, quiet and trusting, doing what it's supposed to do. Be a pretty thing, make us feel better when we're blue. But love, her death, wasn't met with dust and decay. She's been entertaining from the table and dead since the first day. kind of reminds me of some people in this world who, they just kind of walk around being all pretty and entertaining and stuff, but really they're on the inside, they're just kind of like, yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing with myself right now. So this next one is called Cacti Heart, and it reminds me also of people who have very beautiful souls, but on the outside, I guess because of things they've been through, they just have a very tough, sharp armor, but they don't really want to be that way, I suppose. Anyway, be careful. Those things can hurt you. There's a reason why people don't screw with them. You gotta use the right equipment to chop them down. Prickly and sharp with a flower atop. Don't confuse me for a lively crop. I grow very slowly over chunks of time. I don't grow beautifully sitting fair on a vine, or so I've been told. Over years that I grow old. I'm only a bit better than dust and mold. At least that's what I believe. People run and they flee, still they bump into me, then they cry and they bleed. If you look close enough, I have a healthy green body. I'm packed with water, but prone to rotting. As I tower and stand, so very lonely from the sand, please still understand that I very will cut your hand. I have much inside, though I don't require a lot. A little is enough for the life that I fought. I wish I could give you it all and replenish your days, but I'm sharp and I'm scared to be ravaged away.
Hello, my name is Ernest, and I have one poem tonight. It's called Legacy. I'm not sure what I shall be, but I am sure of what I won't do. I will not build. I do not wish to become another Ozymandias, sitting on a front porch, discussing my works with other shattered visages. Those chipped kings that mummified their legacy so that we could take notes, who wrote instructions and their wrappings before falling asleep. This is not how I wish to talk, through marble, gold-stained teeth, gagged by a conversation of an empire made of Legos that a bored middle schooler will eventually dissect for his favorite parts. I don't want to treat history like a college class. I'm not being graded by them, kings of dirt, who rule what sets in the grooves of my shoes. I will not lose my life to a world obsessed with legacy. I'm not sure what I'll do and what my time on earth will contain, but I am sure of what I won't do.
All right, great job, Grassroots. Next, the next group is some students of mine, three of whom were challenged to write either a sonnet or a villanelle. I won't explain what all those are, but you got to kind of think about it a little bit. So the first person who is coming up is Chris Thomas, who wrote a sonnet, and then Celeste Wager, who wrote a villanelle, which is pretty hard to do. So is a sonnet. And then Mackenzie Stewart, who wrote a villanelle and another poem. And then Ian Salas, who is a current student, but not in the class that wrote villanelles and sonnets. But those students of mine can come up in that order now. So welcome, students.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Thomas, and I wrote In a World Divided. In a world completely riddled with strife, little deliberation left for youth, many trials must we face in this life, with so many of us lacking true couth. Our prevalent leaders poison our minds, led by a media we cannot trust, all the time making us more unrefined, promoting a life of misdeed and lust. We're on the precipice of a world lost. Even now, there's time to correct our course. Maybe every resource we must exhaust, fighting the enemy without remorse. All we have to do is stand together and never let our leaders pull the tether. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Celeste. I have two poems with me tonight, and
I'm just gonna read them as fast as possible before I run off like a deer in headlights. This first one is for like all the kids out here tonight. I know there's not many, but this one's for you. Just in case you want to raise your hand when you don't want to go outside. I do not wish to go outside today. The sun doth always shine so brightly. Till all is still and quiet, I won't stray. And of the snow I can't even convey, so I will not hold my tongue politely. I do not wish to go outside today. This weather will always keep me at bay. Now don't tell me it's raining, oh how untimely. Till all is still and quiet, I won't stray. It is here where I will be, and I will stay. To what's outside stops being unsightly. I do not wish to go outside today. Oh how the lightning makes me run away. I am unable to act so nightly. Till all is still and quiet, I will not stray. Against your wishes I will not be gay, for all your words to me are unlikely. I do not wish to go outside today, till all is still and quiet I will not stray. And this is my second one. It's called Fire in the Nursery. I'm a big crime fan. It's not really crime, but it's more what's that one show called where it's it was gonna be a really funny joke, and I spent like 10 minutes over there just my knees are shaking. Knees weak, arms are heavy. But anyways, just improv. Why have you awakened me? Asks the blind boy. This is no time for games, replies the mouse. Can't you hear it? No. The wood screams while it is being eaten by the flames. You jest, exclaims the boy. I do not jest, the mouse states. Can't you smell it? No. The wood cries while it is being eaten by the flames. You jest, the boy again exclaims. I do not jest, the mouse again assures. Can't you feel it? No. The wood warms while it is being eaten by the flames. Mouse, you jest? Asked the blind boy lying in bed. No, dear boy, I do not jest. The Twilight Zone.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie Stewart. I'm going to be reading two poems. The first one is going out from the perspective of death. It's called A Message from a Friend. I am not designed to take you from this place forcefully. You beautifully haunting creatures kill me, I cannot lie. Please do not rush into that conveyor belt to eternity. Perfect and imperfect moments of time set up so artfully. Those perfect brushstrokes scattered across the sky. I am not designed to take you from this place forcefully. The orchestra of the end is on a loop for infinity, those soft exhales signaling your swift goodbye. Please do not rush into that conveyor belt to eternity. A soft glow shines from transparent figures almost perfectly. Feather-soft souls find me to take them home up high. I am not designed to take you from this place forcefully. The end races fast for so many humans in modernity. Oh, what has society come to over the years, I cry. Please do not rush into that conveyor belt to eternity. I am not the heartless, cold being you tend to describe. Oh my near human heart bleeds for everyone hurrying by. I am not designed to take you from this place forcefully. Please do not rush into that conveyor belt to eternity. My second poem is just a freestyle poem. It's one that I wrote basically modeling how I felt with my mental health going through high school and going into college. It's called Protostar. Burning star, burning bright, burning star, burning hot. Hot, hot, too hot, explode. Little rock, burning low, cold, cold. Little rock, burning brighter, warmer, warmer, burst. New star, shining bright.
Hello, my name is Ian Sells. I'm reading two poems today. The first of which was the first poem I've ever written, which is homage to my favorite author and my favorite book that he wrote, which is H.G. Wells' The War of Worlds. There's a few references in here for those of you who know the broadcast, or even if you know about the musical that's in the UK on it. This poem is called Inevitability. The end is nigh. At this dark truth I take the labor's sigh. Three-legged titans of glittering metal dominate the vacant world with their cries which roar like thunder. Because of this I am restless with fear and forgot the meaning of slumber. I saw but the lives silenced by these monsters, as if they were tall grasses cut with a capricious sweep of the grim reaper's side. For now, however, I hide in the ruins of a charred and crumpled house. But starved as I am, I only long for the touch of my missing spouse. As I whisper a prayer only the Lord will hear, I silently mourn the fact that she is not here. The second poem I'm reading, if I can get through it, is actually a recent one from my grandfather who recently passed away. The poem's title is From Me to Pop. From after-school fishing at a fairgrounds pond to my first zebra cake by a generational sweet-toothy bond. From countless laughs and go-fish games to buzzard butt and lizard lips being invited to his enemy pains. From my cousin and I watching Spider-Man and he CSI, to him always snacking on treats and moon pies. From the nasty stench of catfish bait to letting us stay up and watch cartoons in the evening light. From pestering and spoiling us rotten to cherished memories that will never be forgotten. From thousands of jokes and millions of smiles to see you later alligators and after a while crocodiles. From riding with him in a tractor seat to missing my pop who Jesus gives to me. Your love and miss you and that will never stop. From me, your grandson, your buddy, to you and my grandpa, my pop.
Thank you, guys. Very good. So the next group that's coming up, there's a handout that can I get some help here? I think you have some of these. And can I get another volunteer? Yeah, I think you can go one way and you can go the other. Okay, thank you. Maybe just one per table. But our next group is a department at the College of Business Technology Department under Dr. David Boven's leadership, came together and wrote a poem together. The English department shares a building with the Biz Tech people, and there's a whiteboard in our conference room. And I walked in there one day, and there were poems all over this board. I'm like, what? Who has been in here? You know, and it was this group. They were coming up with what you're seeing in front of you right now. So there's the reason you have a handout is because there's artwork involved, and then there is also poetry involved. So the artist that you see, the picture that you see is by the artist Ariel Barentine. Thank you so much. And our authors are Winnie Mayfield, Ariel Barentine, Jabril Rodriguez, Dr. David Boven, and Gabriel Short. Did I miss anybody? Okay. I did. I got nothing. Okay. So they're actually going to come up and kind of share the microphone and do this together. So this will be a new experience for all of us. So y'all, welcome to Business Department. Come on.
Good evening. So the School of Business and Technology is quite diverse. We have technologists, we have videographers, film editors, we have future healthcare workers. We thought this past semester, what can we do to challenge ourselves, to step out of our comfort zone? So we thought, wow, let's do something we haven't done in a while, or in my case, never at all. Let's do some artwork, let's write some poetry, and let's integrate it together, right? Not too lofty. Well, it turned out to be quite lofty. It was a lot of work. We used the conference room whiteboard quite a bit. Took us quite a few months, but very rewarding. So our thought is we will probably begin with Ariel to talk about the genesis of our artwork, and then we'll each read our poem and say whatever comes to mind. So we'll begin with Ariel.
Hello, I'm Ariel Barentine. We were
were prompted by Dr. Dave Bowman to come up with a fairly happy poem, or, piece of art. And that's why we ended up coming up with poetry that was themed around building a home around people around you, rather than where you were born, or the circumstances you were born into. That's why on the paper you can see the people are mending each other together, because you're broken and everybody isn't perfect, but you help each other out in your own way whenever you find a healthy relationship. And the poem that I wrote was, they're not titled, but it was, it is only when you grow and experience vivid change, you begin to realize that happiness is what you make around you. And that will forever stay the same. I think that represents that idea very well, as all the other poems do. And this is Winnie, and she helped with the text on it. She did all that. She did very well. She's gonna come here now.
So, Dr. Bowman says that it was a collaborative project, but I just want to throw him under the bus really quick. He came out of his office and into our office area one day, and he handed me the Grassroots magazine that you all have, and he said, Winnie, the college, they do this really cool thing where everybody collaborates, and we put out a book of poetry, and it's really awesome. And I said, oh, that's really cool. And he said, okay, so you'll head that up for our department. And I was like, I guess. And that's how we got here. I basically lost everybody around. I don't have any poetry included in this, but I was very happy, and we are very happy as a department to have this opportunity and to be welcomed into a space that we're not usually in. So I'm going to read a poem that one of our other poets wrote. His name's Gabriel Short, and he's not here tonight, but I'll read what he wrote. Soft eyes gaze, I turn to stone. A loving phrase, turned shattered home. Finally moving on, no longer alone, as I think to myself, this is home. And I'll let Trail read his poetry now.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chipola Rodriguez. I'm kind of an assistant in the Business and Technology Department, specifically the technology area. So I'm not going to repeat the story that the other two have shared with you guys, because I was pretty much dragged in with the ball and chain. Like, you got to do this. I'm like, okay, fine. So I'll do my best. So the title of my poem isn't titled necessarily, but we did come up with a mutual title that I wrote, and I don't remember it exactly, but it's on the top of the cover. But the poem that I wrote has to do with the same theme as the rest of them, and here we go. Their laughter surrounds me. Their hearts beat in a rhythm like a smooth conversation. Their love lives not just in me, but in those around me. They are my own. Thank you.
So then lastly, I didn't know what a hyphen was. I probably learned years ago. The 575. So this is my core attempt. So light a steady view that can feed the heart and mind a sustaining goal. So thank you for this opportunity, Professor McGinnis.
Dr. Bowman, they're so honest. Guys, y'all aren't supposed to tell everything. Well, our next group is not really a group, it's someone who is in a category by himself, Josh Manning. Josh? You not there? Okay, we lost Josh, so. No, that's okay. If he shows up, we'll get him back. But, our last group is a group of professors and teachers. We have a teacher, Mr. John Gibson from Graceville High School, and then Dr. Mark Adele from Chipola College, and then I'm going to bring up the rear, and we will enter into our time of questions and answers. So, John, come on.
Good evening. My name is John Gibson. I teach English at Graceville High School. I'm very thankful to be here tonight. Thank you for the opportunity. I have 3 poems that I'd like to share with you. First one is titled Arduous Veils, and it's really just about the hard times in life and how they impact us and shape us. Climb to the mountaintops, scale tall heights, spend there a few mornings, afternoons, and nights. Breathe in the air, drink in the view, as the far and wide vistas exhilarate you. Then down from the summit, through the crags and the hills, remove yourself, traveler, from nature's dear thrills. And into the valley shall you go and remain, and for a time drink deeply of the soul's sad refrain. For here is the place where your spirit must grow, not the peak of the mountain in the sun's vibrant glow. Rather deep in the low country is where hearts take wing, where born of adversity the soul learns to sing. Its song born of heartache, adversity, and pain causes countenance to falter and to rise once again. Yes, the valley is growth, its fertile soil life, sown in harsh struggle, germinated with strife. Yet blooming in time, bearing life-giving fruit, if indeed we have planted in the valley our roots. Thus be not discouraged by the arduous veils, rather draw strength in life in the pits of life's dells. That other souls weakened by tumult and wear may draw strength from your roots as their burdens you bear. This next poem is a 3-verse poem that I wrote at the end of the year 2020. It's called I See a Year. I see clearly the forgotten dreams, the plans, the hope of a new decade, dashed as circumstance and the machinations of vain and aspiring men took over. I see wisdom, gleaned of hardship, as is the natural order of things, life lessons, raw emotions, tears shed, and strength realized. I see a year, perfectly ensconced in the imperfection of a Christmas gift wrapped by a child, tattered, torn, yet the virtues within, meant for our betterment as a people and a planet. A year wrapped in hope as we look to an uncertain future brightening, as we leave behind the pain and heartache. I see a year. And this last poem is really a metaphorical poem, if you will. It's titled Inside the Ivory, and it's about hope deferred and the things that we chase after sometimes that are really not good for us, despite the fact that we want them so badly. Inside the ivory. For sufficient sacrifice you enter in, fame and fortune the spoils of your glorious win. For you, no more strife, no more doleful chagrin, as you venture inside the ivory. All encircling you, see the chosen, the proud, feel the warm embrace of the sacred crowd. The din of camaraderie echoes strong and loud among the fellowship inside the ivory. Outside are the wishers, aspirers all, awaiting and hoping their names to be called, that they too might enshrine themselves within the white halls that are now yours inside the ivory. The tower so tall, the ivory ornate, the aplomb, the riches of men's spirits great, your life far removed from the wiles of fate as you abide now inside the ivory. Ah, but fate, it does find you nevertheless. An odd sensation now fills up your breast. Strange dreads now detected your heart and soul press as you remain inside the ivory. Is it the weight of status, expectations, or pride? You can only guess as you seek to hide. The trepidation now pursuing you stride for stride as you stumble inside the ivory. Escape now becomes the soul's new aspiration, to flee from the ivory's mad consternation, to breathe in fresh air and live new inspiration, to abscond from inside the ivory. Escape though you may, or perhaps nevermore, or perhaps the white tower holds your soul evermore. But know this, the woeful wisdom from dreamers of yore, give not your life to the ivory. Instead, look above and donate your existence to deeds that do nurture man's fragile subsistence, and causes which ennoble humankind's frail persistence, hold in higher esteem than mere ivory. To fulfill one's dreams and the soul's baleful yearning, oft vexes the spirit and leaves hearts ever turning, rendering dreams all but crushed and men's destinies burning, as the dreamer dies inside the ivory. Thank you. Dr. Martinville. The poem I'm going to read is called Old Joe. And I started this poem for the poetry reading last June, I believe it was. We were out here on the patio underneath some lights on a nice June evening. And Kurt Dennis and I are colleagues, and he asked me if I was going to read this year, and I didn't really have anything. I really wasn't inspired to do anything. That was in the fall of the year. Well, along came spring break, and my son had hatched a plan to do a father-son surfing trip to the northern coast of Peru, to a little town, beach town called Chicama. There's only one reason why he would travel 29 hours to get to Chicama, and that's because it boasts the longest surfing wave in the world. But don't get me wrong, it was a father-son trip, but I was not surfing. My knees could not keep up to the tension that it causes surfing, but my son would follow the usual surfing pattern of getting up before dawn and surfing till about 10 o'clock, and then going out and resting for a while, and coming back at 5, surfing until the sun goes down. So with this lifestyle, you have a lot of idle time, and I had not written anything, so I started writing. I'm also a fan of Ernest Hemingway and research his work and write about him and his work. And he had a habit of combining the outdoors with writing. For example, he went to Wyoming in summers from his Key West home and would write in the summers in the mornings and then fish all afternoon. Well, I found this to be pretty effective too for writing poetry. Only I was in a seacoast location, and I spent the afternoons working on this poem. Old Joe was a loyal old steed. It's never too late to run was his creed. He won races in 08 and 12, but in 16 he declined to delve. Seems as though old Joe had grown fond of the pastoral life, but in 20, his trainers were in strife. They suspected that some of their best running mounts were apt to take falls, and old Joe just could not refuse when duty calls. A lick and a promise were all he needed to prepare for the race in which he was seated. Once old Joe was on the track, his trainers could kick back, for they could see his destiny, a savior of sorts, if one could only ignore his most embarrassing snorts. Although Joe was advanced in age, his trainers preferred to present him as a sage. He still runs well, his trainers insisted, despite his years, and quite capable was he of conquering nearly everyone's fears. The race began with challenges on the left and on the right, from within and from without. Now old Joe's prospects were seriously in doubt. Some 16 contenders, with a good many merely pretenders, entered into the fray. Old Joe's trainers considered, could he summon up the strength in his withers? Out of the gate, old Joe was late. His trainers feared an uncertain fate. But when the two lead horses hugged to the left rail, old Joe grabbed the center, and his bid for a win took off like a sail. When an old rival approached his flank, old Joe leaned to the left again and improved his chances with the bank.
Once on the home stretch, old Joe came from behind, just nipping his closest contender. Some protests, never mind. To the cheers of many, though the margin was small, old Joe was crowned race champion. God help us all.
Well, John, well, I need to move this out of the way. This is a poem about my father. It's sort of a fictional account of what might have been. It's called A Perfectionist. He laid the blade of his Barlow knife on the edge of the dull lead and drew it upward toward his fist, and long, even shavings of cedar wood mingled with graphite dust dropped onto his desk. Melvin was good at sharpening pencils. He had a good pocket knife whose blade was curved where it had once been flat. Hours at the whetstone, first with Papa showing him how, and later he himself alone, had eroded the steel down to a razory crescent. Maybe it was the moon-shapedness of the blade which allowed for the perfect scythe-like slices, or the determination with which he whittled like a pulpwood logger swinging his double-edged axe at the base of a longleaf pine, or like God laying his own righteous blade to the roots of fruitless trees. But all the children at the two-room schoolhouse knew that if you wanted your pencil sharpened to a precise point, you asked Melvin. He finished his work and began to clear his desk, careful not to spill anything onto the floor. Miss Beasley hated a mess and would let you know it quick. But she liked Melvin, adored him really. He was the teacher's pet, and rightly so. He was a good boy, and everyone knew it and appreciated it. Still, he tried hard to please. He brushed the lead and wood bits into his hand, opened the wood stove door, and cast it in, causing a fleeting flame to blaze up and die as suddenly as it had arisen. The next poem is called Stolen Fruit, and it is in the new Litter Like You Live Here book. The boy had been fond of sweetness as long as he had been, filching figs from the towering bush by the back shed, worrying watermelons to the rind, single-handedly chewing 6-foot cane stalks down to dry fiber, slurping scuppernong, juice only, discarding hulls, sour pulp, and seeds in the shade of the arbor. These his voracious devices in the service of his devotion. Could anything in God's green world be better than the harvest of Granddaddy's fields and orchards? The notion that stolen food tastes finer had never occurred to him until he heard his grandmother sing it in a hymn one day as she scoured the porch boards with soap and scalding water. His head snapped sideways to catch her words, carried by steam to his eager ears. Was it true? Were stolen waters sweet and bread eaten in secret pleasant? Solomon and Granny had meant it as a warning, but sometimes even admonishment can awaken love before its time. For him, this knowledge was revelation, not caution. He had to know. And so, tempted thus, he followed his lust, sneaking into the cellar where Granny kept her preserves. He knew it was wrong, the law of God written on his heart, and Granny's song ringing in his ears. Slinking in darkness, hardening his heart, plugging his ears, he reached for the shelf and pilfered a jar of figs, fruit of Granny's canning labors the summer before. The burnt amber of the sugared fruit sparkled like wine in the glint of the sun on the mason jar, and his heart throbbed in anticipation of the moment to come. In stealth, he snuck away to the covert of the closest shelter, and kneeling behind the pump house with his purloined plunder, he could not stifle an eruption of pure rapture, and laughed and laughed and laughed. The crackling air seal seemed to whisper a warning that he could not heed. Too late now. Shallow breaths, shaking fingers dipped into the sugary liquor, and soon he knew what all the fuss had been about.
Solomon and Granny were right. Oh, that we might know that the jar's contents, forsaken, rotted in the heat of the Florida summer, or that the thief, gorged in his gluttony, vomited the cloying contents of his guts, never to revisit it. But this is a happy tale of lessons learned. Sin is no singular fruit, but one that grows in bunches, like the purple muscadines and golden scuppernongs on backyard vines. One burglary led to another and another and another. He buried his booty at the back edge of Granddaddy's pea patch, behind a blueberry bush, and like the dog of the adage, returned and returned and returned. I know I'm going on and on, but I really want to read one more. This one's out of a little do-it-yourself chapbook collection of poetry that I just put out. It's called Sonnets, real creative. And this is a true story. It's a song. It's titled "To the Elderly Man Watching Clifford the Big Red Dog Alone in a Crowded Movie Theater." What brought you here today with hoary locks, trifocal eyes, and baggy rumpled clothes, to lodge alone down front, away from flocks of squealing kids and parents in repose? What have you lost that you now seek to find in this incongruous foreign space, the one so chronologically removed, confined to solitude amid such roiling fun? When you walked in, I studied to detect what tiny feet rushed to your chair side, to gladden you and to belie neglect. But no child came. And so I must surmise some grief, incomprehensible to me, as here you sit, a friendless mystery. Sorry to leave on a sad note there. Thank you, and thank you to all the poets. I wanted to give a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, Lynn, if you want to come back up. Did anybody have any questions? And what we'll do is, if you'll ask, I'll repeat so we can get it on film here. We're filming everything tonight. Does anybody have a question about Lynn's poetry or process or anything like that?
I do.
Oh, thank you.
Have you ever collaborated on a poem before?
Okay, so the question is, just so we're getting it here, have you ever collaborated on a poem before?
I have not. I've required my students to do it. I wrote something called a group poem, where they write 2 lines and fold it over so in the second line shows. The next student writes 2 lines and folds it over so their own poem and their last line shows. It's an interesting effect with that. Try to feed off the previous line and stay true to it. Sometimes you got some really good poems from that.
All right. Okay, anyone else?
Who's your favorite poet?
Who is your favorite poet?
I have several, but I really like Elizabeth Bishop a lot. I don't know if you've read her, but she's a treasure. And she wrote a nice, one of the best villanelles I think ever written called One Heart. You villanelle writers. It's really good poem. Yeah. I like Philip Dean too. And Seamus Heaney. A bunch of good poets.
Daisy.
How do you deal with writer's block?
How do you deal with writer's block? Truth is, I don't believe in writer's block. I think what it is failure of nerve. Because you know who doesn't get writer's block? Journalists. They get writer's block, they don't get paid. So I think it's really failure of nerve. We don't think we can live up to the challenge of what we're working on. Push through it. Just challenge yourself to keep going.
Anybody else? All right, yes, sir, John.
Someone mentioned screenwriting is in your background. Do you do any type of workshop or tutoring or mentoring with aspiring screenwriters?
Well, I offer screenwriting at Gulf Coast occasionally, but it rarely makes. So screenwriting is close to stage craft, stage writing, playwriting. So usually I'll get the theater arts people in there. They can run either the stage play or screenplay. I've done a lot of work with it. I've got screenplays out in Hollywood that will never be made into movies. So, yeah, I would be open to contacting and talking with you about it.
Anyone else?
I have another one. So, do you prefer free verse, or do you prefer like a constrained, like more of a form, like a sonnet or the villanelle?
Well, I like to try to find a form if possible, but often I drift into steady free verse, sometimes with common line lengths. But I've also tried some poems with stanzas that may have 5 lines, and each line, the first line of each stanza is the same length. So it still looks kind of scrawling across the page, but there's a kind of form with that. And I've tried some accentuals and some syllables.
Yes, Emily.
How do you edit your poems and how do you know when they're done?
That's a tough one. How do you edit your poems and how do you know when they're done? I have some poems that are 25 years old and I'm not sure if they're done. Seriously. I go back and I look at it, I'll change this and tweak that. Sometimes you're done. The poem's not done, but you're done. And you say goodbye to it, that's all I can do. You move on to something else. But how do I edit? I write it and I put it to sleep for a while and come back to it. Usually it's fresh, we don't want to change anything. We're still in love with it, right? First draft often. But that's illusory, so I usually set it aside and come back to it later. Also, I workshop it with other people. Sometimes I'll pick up on things I didn't even feel on. It's a good question.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's a story or a moral that you often theme your poetry after?
Is a moral or a story?
Like, what is the thing that you love to implement in your poetry the most?
The quest, the hero's quest sometimes. Prodigal son kinds of stories. Not necessarily in poetry, but in fiction. That's a good question. I haven't ever thought of it that way. I probably do have things that I come back to. I depend on others to point that out to me, rather than me being aware of it. I really enjoyed the poems tonight. And one thing I remember is that dentist whistling. Who did that? Dentist whistling while he's working on your teeth. That's great. A lot of good stuff. I really enjoyed it.
I don't really have a question, but I've got an Elmer Fudd poem I'd like to share with you if you want to show me. The title is Looney Tunes. The Easter Bunny can't be found. Rudolph simply ran him down. Frosty didn't go away, he melted on a sunny day. Tinkerbell had magic dust, and Popeye rarely cussed. Casper was a friendly ghost, but Scooby hated him the most. Captain Hook was very mean, and Elmer Fudd was just obscene. Hunting rabbits with no chance to kill them with a shotgun blast. Donald Duck, he wore no pants, just a shirt and silly hat. Tom was just an army cat, and Jerry had enough of that. Foghorn Leghorn wasn't the same to think that things would ever change. Daffy was a silly duck who plain and simply had no luck. Looney Tunes a proper name, but Santa never really came. And Peter Pan could never fly, it seems that all was just a lie.
Puts us in a certain age group, because all those characters, we know them really well. You know, some of them do probably. Have fun with poetry. You have humorous poems and serious poems and all of the spectrum.
Anyone else? Okay, have a couple more. Susanna, go ahead.
Have you ever tried blackout poetry?
Blackout?
Where you take a piece
okay, I was thinking of something much more serious. Drink until you black out. I've never done that. When I was younger, it was legal, I did something. What is blackout?
Where you take a sheet of paper, like a newspaper, and mark
I can show you an example.
mark out words and letters so that what's left becomes a poem.
I can show you an example.
No, I know what that is, and I have never tried it myself, but I've heard of people taking some of their prose and eliminating all the fifth word, every fifth word of the kid, and then they sometimes you get some interesting effects.
Yeah.
Similar to what you're saying.
Daisy?
I just wanted to say that I love
the voice you did in your first poem. The way.
That's not my poem either, so.
Oh, well, I still love the voice you did though, how you narrated it.
Or maybe that's your problem too. Well, thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Anyone else? Questions? I don't see any more hands. Oh, one more.
Can I share one?
Can you share what now?
She'd like to share a point.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I didn't mean to start it.
That's okay.
Oh, I didn't know.
You gotta come up here though,
Okay.
that's the price you pay.
I'm gonna just share the one.
Hello, everybody. I made this a long time ago. It was kind of some empowerment, so I'm gonna just do the beginning part of this, I guess, go back to my chair. I really did like your poetry, though. This poem is called Potential. My name is Charlotte, by the way. What made you become angry at the world for the simple reasons? What made you weak to your feet and undermine your value was incomplete? What made you feel the test of the Lord put upon you nevertheless? What makes the average woman lean towards a game of blame and shame and a personality that is tamed? What makes the average woman fall into a cage that they sit in, where the doors are open and you have to close them? You have to get out before the door closes on the day of judgment. The day to decide what you're all about. Are you afraid to be cast out? The unvalued woman drinks and sings, smokes out packets of rope, and I half dressed to look like a mess, feeling even more tests. So why are you lusting, sinning, and grinning? Don't you know that you're closer to the end than you ever were at the beginning? I just do that.
All right, well, it's been a good night of poetry. Please give another warm thank you to Mr. Lynn Wallace. And thanks to all the poets who read. Another warm round of applause. It's been a good night. Thank you all for being here. This concludes our program. Mingle around, talk to each other, share poetry.